Have you ever heard somebody use the word postmodern and you're like, what does that mean? What do you mean by it? I think about that all the time. I use postmodern a decent amount, and I have this sort of vague idea of what it means, but I mean, realistically, the concept is so big that any attempt to describe it in minimal terms is really not going to come close to grasping it. Although recently I've been sort of resting my understanding of postmodernism on everybody's favorite musical robot, Jacob Collier. If you don't know who Jacob Collier is, congratulations. He's a musical prodigy, I guess. Somebody who's extremely technical at a variety of different instruments, knows a whole lot of music theory. I like to think of him as the perfect mascot for postmodernism, specifically because he's able to take the last 100 years of music and be a sort of jukebox. If you want to hear some crazy good jazz and that sounds like the 1940s, he's got you. If you want to hear some acoustic guitar, like folksy stuff, he's got you. No matter what you want, right? He can just spit it out. I guess one genre he hasn't really dabbled in much is hip hop, although he did do that one song with like T-Pain, and it was like one of the worst songs I've ever heard in my life. So I think maybe he learned that it was probably bad. So while Jacob is very technically proficient, a lot of his music sort of lacks an emotional substance that goes beyond technicalities. None of this is anything new or should be anything new to most people who have at least listened to his music. A lot of people have also talked about this in depth, so this is nothing new. I think AI is kind of similar to Jacob Collier, you know? That might be a little disrespectful, but, whatever. I think that AI is a sort of perfect past machine, you know? Like AI takes the works of human history and then synthesizes them and then spits them out. Like, oh, you want a short story written in this style? He's like, the AI's got you, right? Like, oh, you want some poetry from this era or whatever? Like, the AI's got you, right? But it's not going to have any sort of like, it's not going to feel like the times we live in, if that makes sense. It would have to have a sort of meta understanding of itself, which it can't have because AI is just a past machine. I keep coming back to this concept that it's more important than ever for us to understand history and understand the past to understand the present. The ghosts of the past, the people of the past, the societies of the past have created the world that we live in. Especially in times, like I've pointed out in past videos, that are so extremely complex. We live in times where it's so hard to understand most of the things in our world, the processes in our world, the bureaucracies, the technologies, all of these things add up over time, and we just kind of lost track with tracking them. However, at the same time, then shouldn't I be praising somebody like a Jacob Collier or AI for being these sort of past machines? They're very good at synthesizing the past, understanding the past, and reiterating them in a variety of different ways. This is a problem, I think, that we have that ultimately gets to sort of why our feelings about AI are so incredibly confused. I've been thinking about this especially this week in regards to the sort of viral Phoenix Flexin song, Rubbers.
Swiping cards and stacking chips. I saw you sinking ships. Left me standing in the pouring rain. Now I bought a heavy diamond chain.
There's been a lot of controversy online. Is this AI? Is this not AI? Well, yeah, it might be AI. Some of the signs are looking like it's probably AI, but you never know. It could not be. Also, it could be somewhere in the middle. Maybe they use like a little bit of an AI tool to mess with the voice a little bit, but he wrote the lyrics. Maybe it was mostly his voice. Then the lyrics were like, it's hard to sort of know, like there could be some middle ground here that we don't really understand, which can make things a lot more complicated. Also, the song sort of gets at what I was just talking about in terms of this weird paradox between new creation and synthesizing the past, because you can make an argument that the song is probably AI because it sounds so far out there, right? Like, it doesn't sound like it's coming from any sort of history that makes sense, sort of songwriting, a development of songwriting that makes sense for him to put out the song. However, you could literally make the same argument for why it's probably not AI. It's probably not AI, someone might say, because it's so different, right? AI would just want to iterate on the past and make a similar song to what he's already made previously. Or AI might be like, okay, let's make a song that's going to do well on the charts. So we got to pick a predictable type of beat and style of lyrics and cadence and tone and so on that's going to sell. Well, how could AI ever predict that that song and that cadence would sell, because we haven't seen something like that in a long time? This paradox is a trap that we won't be able to get out of without some serious type of reformation. This is because AI is us. We are AI. We created the AI. The AI is learning from who humans are. We keep feeding the AI. It is just the Spider-Man meme, essentially. We are pointing our fingers at ourselves. This is something that might sound a bit trite or cheap, but upon a little bit further reflection, it gets a little bit more scary, because many of the problems that we're experiencing now with AI can be traced back to social critiques, people like Marx or John Dewey, like I talked about in my previous video. Many theorists warned us about building a society, a world, that essentially makes humans machines. If most of your time awake every day is spent doing menial labor that is very repetitive and extremely uncreative, then of course AI is going to be very threatening. AI is that sort of mundane, repetitive, only looking back past machine force that is going to be scary. That's going to take jobs of repetition. So effectively, if we want to try to deal with the crisis of AI in a sort of meaningful way outside of band-aids, right? Outside of just, we need a new policy, we need a new regulation on AI, halting of data centers, of, all of these sort of ways to sort of put a band-aid on the problem. If we really want to get to the bottom of the problem, we have to actually go back. We're going to have to go back to looking at the world we've created. Why did we create a world that's so reductive, that doesn't allow people to be creative and experiment with the world in a meaningful way? The other day I was canvassing and I talked to a woman who had a couple kids that were college aged. And she was saying how her kids are very anti-AI. They hate the whole sort of apparatus of large tech companies taking over their lives. Yet, at the same time, they're using it all the time for their assignments. Now, if an alien were looking at our society, they would look at this like, like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why are these humans doing things that they despise? Right? Why are these college kids using AI for their essays and so on, but being very outspoken about how much they hate it? Well, the only way we're going to get to the answer of this sort of paradox is by looking at the conditions that made this possible in the first place. If students really felt like they were involved creatively in their coursework, if they felt like their schools were a meaningful part of the community that they were building, if they felt like their homework was something that was powerful in the world, it was something that they really wanted to learn and understand, then they probably wouldn't use AI. They would speak out against it, and they would not want to use it because they would want to use their own brains, right? I don't want to use some other brain to work on my music, for example, because it's my music, right? Like, it's me. No one's going to make music like me if I make it authentically and so on. I wouldn't want to use a bot. But if I'm getting told to do something that I don't want to do, of course I'm going to use a bot. And who wouldn't want to use a bot? We're seeing this all the time in the job market, right? Bosses don't want to actually read applications, so they have bots to do it for them. People applying for jobs don't actually want to write a cover letter for a job they don't really care about, but they need a job, so they use bots. So if we're really serious about the AI crisis, it's going to be a much bigger problem and a much bigger endeavor than just we need regulation or we need to stop this infrastructure. I think the band-aids are important in many ways and we should fight for them, but we shouldn't lose track of the major problem, which is that humans are becoming more like bots than ever before. I sort of took my thoughts and conclusions from this week, and I thought it would be interesting to see what ChatGPT had to say about the whole thing. And I guess to my shock, I don't know, I'm simultaneously not shocked and shocked. But regardless, ChatGPT's analysis was pretty sound. I asked the AI to provide some solutions, right? What should we do? It gave 5 bullet points. First, experience instead of information. AI can describe grief, love, boredom, or awe, but it doesn't undergo them. Art that emerges from lived experiences may become more valuable, not less, because people recognize the difference between description and testimony. Second bullet point, play instead of optimization. Many institutions, from schools to workplaces, reward efficiency. Creativity often comes from activities with no obvious purpose. Wandering, improvising, making mistakes, experimenting, those are increasingly rare because they're economically unproductive. Bullet point 3, communities instead of audiences. Much of the internet turns people into broadcasters chasing metrics. Sound familiar? Creative cultures historically emerged in small groups where people challenged and inspired one another rather than maximizing engagement. This whole platform, the whole internet, is not that. We have an uphill battle to climb. Number 4, craft instead of output. AI can produce enormous amounts of content. Humans may find more meaning in developing mastery. Whether woodworking, composing music, gardening, or scientific research, where the process matters as much as the result. Number 5, curiosity instead of certainty. AI is good at generating plausible answers. Humans are uniquely capable of changing what questions are worth asking in the first place. This is probably the most important to me. We, unfortunately, have built a world in which only certain answers are deemed worth asking. The questions that are not seriously worth asking go into the liberal arts college classes, right? No politician's going to be under threat because of liberal arts classes, so those questions can go there. But the questions that seriously impact our lives are sort of missing in action. We don't see them. Then ChatGPT continued, I think, pretty adeptly, and said, there's also a historical irony. Thinkers from Karl Marx to Max Weber to Ivan Illich worried long before AI that industrial society was training people to become extensions of bureaucracies and machines. AI didn't create that concern, it exposed it. If a person's value has been reduced to producing reports, answering emails, or following procedures, then software will inevitably become a competitor. Then it says, the challenge may not be how do humans become more creative than AI, but why did we build systems that reward us for behaving less creatively than we're capable of? A great question. If AI ends up automating much of routine intellectual labor, society faces a choice. It could demand that humans become even more machine-like to stay competitive, Or it could redefine success around the qualities machines don't possess: judgment, relationships, moral responsibility, lived experience, and the ability to decide what is worth caring about in the first place. In that sense, AI may be less the cause of the crisis than a mirror. It reflects back the values we've embedded in our institutions. The real question is whether we'll change those institutions or keep trying to outperform machines by becoming more like them. Now, you might be saying, why are you using AI for this video? Why are you citing AI? The reason why I am, and the reason why I'm not citing those authors who've made those points in the past, which I will in future videos, don't worry, is because, like I said earlier, AI is a past machine. It's just sort of picking up the ghosts of the past, synthesizing what people have already discussed. This should let us know that in order to solve the AI crisis, we already have the tools. We don't need anything more, really. If anything, we have to reconnect with knowledge that we already have. ChatGPT says we have a choice. We can try to outperform the machines, or fundamentally restructure our society so that we don't overly value repetitive, uncreative work. I think that we don't really have a choice, honestly. I think ChatGPT is a little bit too optimistic for humans here. We can't outperform the machines. We met our match. In an uncreative world where people are more machine-like than they've ever been, of course it makes sense that AI is going to threaten our daily lives, everything we know. It's going to be a rude wake-up call. Looking in the mirror. But gotta start somewhere.